Welcome to JGTCR, I'm Cope, and today we are tuning the Alpine A220. Let's get into it. As this is a race car, it handles rather well, but since it's an old race car, it's not without its quirks. The front end is very light, and as such, we suffer from quite a bit of understeer. This also means the front end is prone to lifting, so we can find ourselves without steering whatsoever. And without some firm grip up front, it makes the A220 very difficult to rotate at times. The power and power delivery are nuanced and something we need to become accustomed to. This vehicle is strongest in the bottom end of the rev range. Anything after 6,500 RPM is a high chance of wheel spin, so it is best to short shift on most occasions unless we are driving in dead straight lines. The A220 can handle well at low RPM, but once we start pushing the RPM, we find ourselves experiencing understeer, which can switch to oversteer very quickly. Let's take a look at the lap time. (7 minutes 40.9 seconds). Let's make some improvements with a race tune. Our main focus with this tune was to keep the nose down, as maintaining control through steering is a priority. This was achieved through downforce and keeping the tail end a touch higher than the nose. We also considered adding some front ballast, but found the tune was sufficient without it. The rear suspension also saw some work to try and minimize the wheel spin. Let's test this on track. The suspension is much more firm and bouncy, but as long as we stay on the black stuff, we're golden. The tuned A220 is much better all round. It still prefers the mid-range RPM, but it is nowhere near as moody if we care to venture into the higher RPM. It is only when we are pushing too hard that we experience wheel spin on corner exits. The tail end is very grippy compared to stock. The nose of the vehicle no longer feels light and breezy. Instead, the front end grips well, with only occasional understeer moments. Handling has improved tenfold, and the vehicle does what it's told, generally speaking. And under braking, we are solid, stable, and predictable. After tuning, the A220 is a fast car that is fun to drive. And it also has that cool turbo flutter many people love. Let's get that lap time. 6 minutes 35 seconds flat. On to the drift tune. The Alpine A220 does not like to drift, but we have forced it to do so with some extreme settings. But do not for one moment think this Alpine is going to make it easy for us. Let's take a look. We really had to use every trick in the book to get the Alpine A220 to drift. Rear camber and tow out completely maxed. Downforce maxed. Differential maxed. Ballast up front, check. But we still failed to put together a reliable drift car. Yes, it does drift, but it is quite moody while doing so. There are some very fine lines between successfully drifting and either spinning out or gripping up, and the A220 is just waiting to capitalize on any mistake that we may make and rain on our drift parade. If RPM is too high, the tail end will spin out. If RPM is too low or the degree of drift angle not enough, gripping up is quite likely. So we must maintain our RPM at a certain high and low band for our drift to be successful. Any adjustments to our drift via handbrake or foot brake also have a low success rate, again resulting in either spinning out or gripping up. As such, our drift must be accurate, precise, smooth and calculated to stand a chance. And as we well know, in the world of drift, there are many variables to contend with, making this a challenging drift car. The Alpine A220 race car has a bit of an oddball feel in factory trim. The light front end and heavy tail end makes it feel like we are constantly fighting this vehicle, be it for traction at the front or at the rear. But once modified, tuned and balanced more evenly, the 220 becomes a far more reasonable vehicle to deal with. The oddball quirks are still present, but in much smaller quantities they become endearing instead of frustrating. And that's all we have for you today, so until next time, keep racing.